Why did you guys want to de-emphasize combat? Howdy folks, I got another Bladeslinger vlog for you. So I just got done playing Indiana Jones in the Great Circle, the new Indiana Jones game. So before I get started on this, I guess I should give my thoughts on the Indiana Jones series. I love the Indiana Jones films. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, love Temple of Doom, love The Last Crusade. I even get a kick out of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Though I do draw the line at Dial of Destiny. They just shouldn't have made that movie to begin with. But not too long after Dial of Destiny released, it was announced that Lucasfilm Games and Disney had partnered with Bethesda to make a new game based on the Indiana Jones series. And not one based on Dial of Destiny, thankfully, just more one based on the franchise as a whole, which I thought was a good idea. However, I wasn't too enthused when I heard who they had got to make the game, and that was Machine Games, the guys behind the new Wolfenstein games. I was never a big fan of the new Colossus or the New Order. I just thought they were, in general, pretty sloppy first-person shooters, despite them being enjoyable at times. But yeah, I didn't think that this was the right team for the job. And it also didn't help that a lot of the gameplay footage that I had seen of the new Circle, it didn't really impress me. I thought the first-person perspective was a mistake, and they were definitely showing off the cinematics more than they were the gameplay as a whole. So I went into the game hesitantly, but when it started getting really good reviews from critics at the time, I thought that it was worth checking out. So I got on my Xbox Series S, played it front to back, and yeah, parts of it are really, really good, but then there are also parts that I think are just a little mediocre. The first thing I want to praise about this game is the plot. So this game takes place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, and it sees the museum that Indiana Jones works for be robbed, with Indy going after the culprit when he finds a clue that leads them to the Vatican. When he gets there, he discovers that a German archaeologist by the name of Voss is trying to obtain a series of relics related to something called the Great Circle, which is a theory among archaeologists where a bunch of noteworthy archaeological sites seem to line up with each other and create a perfect concentric circle around the Earth. So Indy decides to follow up on this and quickly discovers that the secret of the Great Circle could lead to trouble if the Nazis get their hands on it, because of course it does, and thus leads to a globetrotting adventure where they travel all over the world, punching out Nazis and wooing the lovely lady along the way. It's definitely the closest in spirit to the original Indiana Jones movie. It's just trying to be a fun adventure with fun characters, and while it doesn't lean too heavily into the Christian religious artifacts that Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom do, it doesn't go as weird as Temple of Doom or Crystal Skull. It's not like there's any aliens in the game. But yeah, I thought this was a really good one. Indiana Jones is definitely in character. I like his sidekick for most of the game. And Voss is probably the best villain in the entire series. I'd even say that he's cooler than Belloc. He just has this really threatening confidence to him, and I especially like how he is just making this German, I want to say captain, who is working under, come to heel just by playing him like a fiddle. It's just great. It's a great plot through and through. Something else that I want to praise about the game is just the overall presentation. Now, I have expressed annoyance with how many games are going for photorealism and motion capture these days, just because they're really beefing up the budgets and driving up the price of games. But in this case, I actually think it's necessary because it's Indiana Jones. You want it to look as real as possible, but they still keep in mind the careful attention to detail that there was in the filmmaking of Indiana Jones. So the way characters dress, the way the different levels and everything are designed, it's exaggerated with different colors and extra details to make it a little more appealing to the eye. So the game is definitely doing very well with that. Like, I was just playing the whole game, like the whole opening of the game especially made me smile because it recreates the iconic scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I just thought was really cool. This also goes for the sound design as well. Indiana Jones is not played by Harrison Ford, though you wouldn't really know it. Instead, here he's played by Troy Baker, and he does an outstanding job vocalizing Indiana Jones. Like, there are times I had to remind myself that it wasn't Harrison Ford, and it just kind of goes to show that you can still get away with making an Indiana Jones game or film, just as long as you get actors who are willing to actually play the character, not necessarily put their own spin on it. So that's why Troy Baker's performance here is so successful. He's not trying to make the role his own, he's just playing Indiana Jones. So, and of course, you got the great film score and also a lot of the sound effects too. I love how when you punch out someone in this game, you get that satisfying crack that you hear in the movies that makes it sound like Indiana Jones is hitting with the same force as a boxer or something. It's so satisfying. Guns are a lot of fun to use. The sound of the whip crack, it actually echoes as it's breaking the sound barrier, especially if you're indoors. Like, so many good details are added to this game. I love it. However, it's when you get into the gameplay that it starts to falter a little bit for me. In regards, now there are some things that this game does really, really well. For starters, the puzzles in this game are just so cool, dude. Like, it's a lot of fun to go into these tombs and look at these puzzles and just slowly piece together how you're supposed to complete them and everything. They're really inventive, really satisfying to finish, and it makes you feel like an archaeologist. It's great. When you're exploring these tombs as well, that's a lot of fun, though. I was kind of disappointed that they didn't put more emphasis on dodging booby traps in this game. I thought that was a wasted opportunity. But these are when the game is at its best, for sure. Outside of that, though, the game definitely has some issues. Probably one of my greater annoyances with the game is how it's all structured. The game goes for something of a semi-open world deal where you are technically on a linear path, but at points in the game, things open up and you have a greater area to explore. It's kind of like Deus Ex or Uncharted: The Last Legacy. And I'm just not a fan of this because due to the nature of how you tend to make your way through these levels, you know, with the platform and everything, it's real easy to get lost in this game, and it also doesn't help that the waypoint isn't always good at sending you in the direction you want to go. So, for example, in these levels, you do have side missions that you can partake in, but I just kind of wanted to get on with the main gameplay. So I tended to ignore them, but for whatever reason, the waypoint marker, even though I set it to take me to the main objectives, it would still sometimes lead me in the complete wrong direction. Like, there was a section in the Vatican where I was trying to take a picture of all these murals or something, and it just took me so far away from that I ended up looking up a fact, like, I was supposed to go in the other direction. Like, what's the deal with that, dude? And that's not the only point in the game where that happens. Like, it's just not always clear what you're supposed to do. And I don't understand why they felt the need to have these sections in the game, because, like, with an Indiana Jones game, I would primarily want it to be an action-focused game, so I would prefer if it was just a straight-up linear game like the Uncharted games. Like, that worked, didn't it? Because of this, the game tends to have a really slow pace, and really, the game doesn't start to get interesting until, you know, you get past the Vatican, I would say, and even into Cairo, I would say you need to get before it starts to liven up a bit. Something else I'm not a big fan of in this game is this game puts way too much focus on stealth. And I get it, in the films, Indy often did have to sneak around while he can easily knock out your typical goose-stepping moron or what have you. It's not like he can fight off hordes of dudes by himself, so I was expecting there to be some stealth in the game, but like, that's what you're doing for most of the game. I would honestly call Indiana Jones and the Great Circle a stealth game more than anything. And what's sad about that is it's not even good stealth either. All it really boils down to is crouch to silence your movement, and then just make sure you avoid an enemy's line of sight. How visible you are, how much noise you're making, stuff like that, it doesn't come into play. And like the system of how you're detected, like if you go into a guard's line of sight, if you're far away, it'll take some time for them to actually become aware of you, and if you're up close, like it'll fill up immediately. At times it just feels a little silly. How you take guards out, you can take them out in one hit if you catch them unaware and you have a weapon in your hand, which I didn't really understand. Indiana Jones strikes me as the kind of guy who can take out someone with his bare hands if he needs to. So the fact that you always need a weapon in order to take enemies out silently just came off as really silly to me. And there's very little gunplay in the game too. Like, you see here how he's holding that rifle as if it's a melee weapon. And that's because if you take a shot at anyone in this game, you're basically gonna die. Because the game isn't really designed for shooting, and he dies so easily. And, like, I just showed you that clip. And, like, I just don't understand what they were thinking with it. It just seems really silly to me. And then we have the melee combats. I've heard a lot of people say that the melee combat in this game is just, you know, not very good, not bad, just unsatisfying. And I disagree. The melee combat in this game is awful, dude. So, like, you have a left hook and a right hook, and you can guard as well, and if you guard just as an enemy attacks, you parry the attack. Here's why this does not work, and it's primarily because of the first-person perspective. When you go to punch someone, it's kind of hard to judge how close they are to you, and because of that, you find a lot of your punches whiffing, and it's even worse when you go to parry as well, because it's hard to tell if you're within the guy's reach, or if you're out of range, or... it just doesn't work very well. And really, I don't understand why they felt the need to go with this first-person perspective. Like, with an Indiana Jones game, I feel like a third-person perspective would have been a lot better. And really, the more I think about it, I would have preferred they have just made Uncharted with an Indiana Jones paint job. Now, I'm not saying that I would want it to be exactly like Uncharted. Like, I don't want to see Indiana Jones crouching behind, like, a crate or something and taking shot at Nazis with, like, a Nazi machine gun or a Thompson or anything. I would want them to rein in the gunplay a little bit because, all things considered, Indy doesn't fire a tremendous amount of shots in the game, in the films. He's most of the time just brawling with Nazis or the thuggy or what have you. So I would have tried to put a little more focus on the melee combat and actually tried to make it a little more satisfying. Something else that I would have had more of in this game are some big set pieces. Like, this game is critically lacking a lot of the wild set pieces that you get in the Uncharted games or the new Tomb Raider games. I mean, they're there, but most of the time they just aren't happening. It's not very satisfying either because it tends to be very automated as well. It's that automated kind of platforming. So, yeah, like, while the puzzles and exploring the tombs is a lot of fun and definitely gives you a strong Indiana Jones vibe, when you're doing basically anything else in the game, it just doesn't work all that well. And it also makes the difficulty a little sporadic as well. The puzzles themselves can be a bit hill-tilting, but if you need a hint, all you gotta do is just snap a picture of the puzzle with Indy's camera. He'll start talking to himself and that'll give you a hint of what you need to do. That's good design. But a lot of the stealth sections and instances where you have to enter into combat, a lot of the time it just boils down to try and die, and I just don't think it works all that well. Like, I feel like Machine Games was just afraid of this game just becoming an Uncharted clone. And I get that, because like, if they had done that, that's the first thing people would have said. It's just an Uncharted clone. But at the same time, you know what people said about Tomb Raider and Uncharted when it came out? This is basically what we thought an Indiana Jones game would be. So I really don't see the harm in making it like those games. Like, just with some slight tweaks. Again, make it more about the melee, have some gunplay in there, not as much, and, you know, focus on the puzzles more, stuff like that. Don't make it first person, like, stick to a third person perspective. It doesn't have to be first person. I feel like if they had done that, it would have been a better game. And also, just stop with the open-ended level design, for crying out loud. It's okay for a game to be linear, for crying out loud. So, yeah, I definitely have mixed opinions on The Great Circle. I definitely had fun playing it, but, like, there were definitely points in the game where I would get frustrated with it and then consider just stopping and not finishing it. But I would always come back to it, and I would get through the sections that were aggravating me, and then I would get to a cool section, but then I would get to another section that just wasn't very good. It's just a game with a very sporadic quality. So while I think this game is good and I would definitely recommend it to Indiana Jones fans, I would definitely say it's not this 9 out of 10 experience that outlets like IGN are hailing it as. I would definitely say it's more of a 7. Yeah, a 7 out of 10 is what I would give it if I were to give it a rating. But really, I would just recommend something like Uncharted or the new Tomb Raider games over this any day. So, yeah, if you're a fan of Indiana Jones, it's definitely worth checking out, but anyone else, there are better games you can play. Well, that's my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I'll see you guys next time.